Artaban continued on his dreary and lonely journey, passing over the dreary undulations of the desert, high upon the back of his camel, rocking steadily onward like a ship over the waves.
The land of death spread its cruel net around him. The stony wastes bore no fruit but briars and thorns. The dark ledges of rock thrust themselves above the surface here and there like the bones of perished monsters. Arid and inhospitable mountain ranges rose before him, furrowed with dry channels of ancient torrents, white and ghastly as scars on the face of nature. Shifting hills of treacherous sand were heaped like tombs along the horizon.
By day, the fierce heat pressed its intolerable burden on the quivering air, and no living creature moved over the silent, swooning earth, except for tiny jerboas scuttling through the bushes and lizards vanishing into the cliffs of the rock.
By night, the jackals prowled and barked in the distance, and the lion made a black ravine echo with his hollow roaring, while a bitter, blighting chill followed the fever of the day. Through the heat and the cold, Artaban pressed steadily onward.
But all was not death and decay. Artaban looked about him and saw the gardens and orchards of Damascus, watered by the streams of Abana and Pharpar, with their sloping swards inlaid with fantastic blooms and their thickets filled with myrrh and roses.
Artaban also saw the long, snowy ridge of Hermon and the dark groves of cedars,
And the valley of the Jordan,
and the blue waters of the Lake of Galilee,
and the fertile plains of Esdraelon,
and the hills of Ephraim.
and the highlands of Judah.
Artaban moved steadily onward until he arrived in the town of Bethlehem. And it happened to be the third day after his 3 brother wise men had come to the stable and found Mary and Joseph with their young child, and had laid their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh at his feet.
Then Artaban, the other wise man, drew near, weary but full of hope, bearing his ruby and his pearl to offer to the infant king.
For now, at last, I shall surely find him, though it may be alone, and later than my brother Magi. This is the place of which the Hebrew exile I helped told me that the prophets had spoken, and here I shall behold the rising of the great light. But I must inquire about the visit of my brother Magi, and to what house the star directed them, and to whom they presented their tribute and gifts.
The streets of the village seemed to be deserted, and Artaban had wondered whether the men had all gone up to the hill pastures to bring down their sheep. From the open door of a lone stone cottage, he heard the sound of a woman's voice singing softly.
Artaban entered the cottage and found a young mother hushing her baby to sleep.
Who are you, and what do you want with me or my child?
Peace be with you, my lady. I bring no violence or harm to your home. I am looking for my 3 brothers, wise men, magi, astrologers from the east, who have surely been here in this city just a few days ago. Have you seen them? What news have you to give me?
I have seen marvelous strangers here from the far east, who appeared in the village not 3 days ago, and how they said that a star had guided them to a place where Joseph of Nazareth was lodging with his wife and her newborn child.
That's exactly what I'm after, and who I am following. Please, tell me more.
Well, all I can tell you is that they paid reverence to the child and gave him many rich gifts.
Is that all the news of this that you have for me?
Let me think. I seem to remember that the travelers disappeared again as suddenly as they had come. Frankly, we were afraid of their visit. We did not understand it. Joseph of Nazareth took the babe and his mother and fled away that night secretly, and it was whispered they were going far away to Egypt.
To Egypt?
Yes, to Egypt. And ever since, there has been a spell on this village. Something evil hangs over it. They say that Roman soldiers are coming from Jerusalem to force a new tax from us, and the men of the village have driven the flocks and herds back among the hills and hidden themselves to escape it.
Artaban listened to her gentle, timid speech, and the child in her arms looked upon his face and smiled, stretching out his rosy hands to grasp the winged circle of gold on Artaban's chest. His heart warmed to the touch. It seemed like a greeting of love to one who had journeyed long in loneliness and perplexity, fighting with his own doubts and fears, and following a light that was veiled in clouds.
Might not this child have been the promised prince?
Artaban stooped and lovingly touched the babe's soft cheek.
Kings have been born in lowlier houses than this, and the favorite of the stars may rise even from a lowly cottage. But it not seem good to the God of wisdom to reward my search so soon and so easily. The one whom I seek has gone before me, and now I must follow the king to Egypt.
The young mother laid the babe in its cradle and rose to minister to the wants of the strange guest.
My friend, here's food for you. Plain food, yes. It is the food of the poor, but willingly offered, and therefore full of refreshment for your soul as well as your body. Please take and eat, and do so with my gratitude.
I accept your offering with deep gratitude, madam. Thank you from the depths of my heart for your hospitality.
Artaban, the mother and the young child, sat in comfort and contentment, enjoying each other's gentle company and basking in the pleasant silence of the lowly cottage.
Suddenly, there came the noise of a wild confusion, and the uproar in the streets of the village, a shrieking and wailing of women's voices.
A clangor of brazen trumpets and a clashing of swords and a desperate cry.
The soldiers! They are killing our children! They're killing our children!
The young mother's face grew white with terror. She clasped her child to her bosom and crouched motionless in the darkest corner of the room, covering her baby with the folds of her robe, lest he should wake and cry out.
But Artaban went quickly and stood in the doorway of the house. His broad shoulders filled the portal from side to side, and the peak of his cap all but touched the lintel.
The soldiers came hurrying down the street with bloody hands and dripping swords. At the sight of the stranger in his imposing dress, they hesitated with surprise. The captain of the soldiers approached Artaban.
Move aside, I say.
I move for no man. Do you hear me? No man.
Artaban's face was as calm as though he were watching the stars, and in his eyes burned that steady radiance before even the half-tamed hunting leopard shrinks, and the fierce bloodhound pauses in his leap. In a word, Artaban's power and majesty stunned the captain.
I am alone in this place, and I am waiting to give this precious jewel to the prudent captain who will leave me in peace.
Artaban showed the captain the ruby, glistening in the hollow of his hand like a great drop of blood.
The captain was amazed at the splendor of the gem. The pupils of his eyes expanded with desire, and the lines of greed wrinkled around his lips. He stretched out his hand and took the ruby.
March on. There's no child here in this house. This house is still.
The clamor and the clang of arms passed down the street as the headlong fury of the chase sweeps by the secret covert where the trembling deer is hidden.
Artaban re-entered the cottage. He turned his face to the east, and he prayed.
God of truth, forgive my sin. I have said the thing that is not, to save a little child, have lied to the soldiers, and 2 of my gifts for the child king are gone. I have spent for man that which was meant for God. Shall I ever be worthy to see the face of the King?
My dear and blessed friend, because you have saved the life of my little one, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Artaban left the tiny cottage, bewildered and confused, but somehow knowing that he had done the right thing after all. His search was not at an end, and he directed himself to continue to search for the Christ child.